The Queen, whose doctors advised her not to attend, greeted the delegates with a recorded message urging them to rise above politics to achieve true statesmanship and reminding them that the benefits of action will be for future generations, not for everyone alive today. When the summit opened at noon, delegates heard a series of powerful appeals for rapid progress. Boris Johnson said that humanity had long since run down the clock on climate change. It was now 1 minute to midnight, he said. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, warned that following a path of greed and selfishness would lead to destruction. And the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, said that countries were digging their own graves by failing to act on climate change. Among the goals being discussed here are ending the use of coal, phasing out petrol-powered cars and reversing the process of deforestation. Our first report on events in Glasgow is by our political editor, Laura Kuenssberg.
A red London bus, electric of course, with a skirl of Scottish pipes. The royals on the steps, the Prime Minister, the host. A full-on UK display. The leaders of the world, the guests, here to be addressed by the 95-year-old monarch. Even if not in person, she's seen plenty of their type before.
It has sometimes been observed that what leaders do for their people today is government and politics. But what they do for the people of tomorrow, that is statesmanship. I, for one, hope that this conference will be one of those rare occasions where everyone will have the chance to rise above the politics of the moment and achieve true statesmanship. It is the hope of many that the legacy of this summit, written in history books yet to be printed, will describe you as the leaders who did not pass up the opportunity. We none of us will live forever. But we are doing this not for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children, and those who will follow in their footsteps.
Ask me where I'm going. But there's the glittering reception in a Glasgow landmark, then the other conference.
Welcome to Glasgow.
Thousands have made the trip from their own countries. Their hope that this morning's queues and the shivering arrival will be worth it. The first serious moment at this vital conference, Boris Johnson's big moment on the main stage.
Humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. It's 1 minute to midnight on that doomsday clock, and we need to act now.
The leaders of some of the biggest polluters, China, Russia and Turkey, haven't shown keeping much more than a social distance.
The anger and the impatience of the world will be uncontainable unless we make this COP26 in Glasgow the moment when we get real about climate change. They will not forgive us. They will know that Glasgow was the historic turning point when history failed to turn.
The platform also for those people whose way of life is at grave risk right now.
The earth is speaking. She tells us that we have no more time.
The UK is the host to a rainbow of nearly 200 countries and wants them all to promise to cut their own carbon emissions, and the wealthier to cough up more towards the $100 billion pot to help poorer countries go green. There is a real sense of purpose here, but it will be a long fortnight, as President Biden and the other leaders must be all too aware. And not all of them are as enthusiastic as the West with wealthier populations, whether Brazil...
Sempre fomos parte da solução, não do problema.
With some new promises today, or a slower approach from the Indian Prime Minister, who says his mega economy will balance carbon emissions with absorbing greenhouse gases by 2070.
2070 tak.
20 years later than Boris Johnson wants. But the mood in Glasgow is perhaps darkening towards those who are dragging their feet.
In 2 generations' time, they will be remembered for this fortnight. They could have been brilliant in everything else they've done, and they will be cursed if they don't get this right.
That's interesting. You use the phrase cursed, which, you know, for somebody in your position of authority, that's a very strong word to use.
It was consciously a strong word. It will be, people will speak of them in far stronger terms than we speak today of the politicians of the 30s, of the politicians who ignored what was happening in Nazi Germany, because this will kill people all around the world for generations, and we will have no means of averting it.
He later apologised for making the comparison to the Nazi genocide. Number 10 stepped down, commenting on the nature of those claims, but said there's no doubt about the seriousness of the climate challenge. It's only day one of a discussion. It's already taken more than 2 decades, but the consequences of Glasgow's conversation will be felt far longer than that.
And Huw, just think, you've had that very personal appeal to world leaders from the Queen tonight. You've had repeated, very vivid demands from Boris Johnson to his counterparts in the last 48 hours. There's no question that the UK is trying to flex every muscle at its disposal, really to try to persuade, to cajole, to say to leaders from right around the world that this fortnight has to mean something beyond this huge event here in Glasgow. It really has to be a moment when things change for the better for decades to come. But remember, the UK is the host. It has the power to try to move the conversation in a direction. But at the end of the day, even the best host can't account for the conduct of all the guests.